the Daily Allegory through astrological divination. Our magic motto of the day is what was hunted becomes the witness, what was hidden becomes the blade. Today's story is about a young woman hungry for revenge and seduced by the promise of money, power, and initiation into a hidden criminal circle. She agrees to help destroy a man she already had marked as a target for her own personal get-back. What began as a private vendetta unfolds into something far darker, an online syndicate of scammers, hackers, insiders, former military members who weaponize surveillance, psychological warfare, mere devices, mock websites, hidden cameras, coercion, and public humiliation as entertainment for an elite digital audience. Their victims are hunted, poisoned, blackmailed, stalked on the roads, pushed towards collapse, and wagered on like sport. While the group profits from their fear, suffering, arrests, breakdowns, and deaths, but when the man they chose refuses to disappear, the story becomes a chilling unraveling of a secret empire built on stolen lives, planted evidence, false narratives, and luxury paid for with human pain. Until the hunt turns back at the hunters and the truth begins clawing its way into the light. Today's story is called The Hunt Was a Mirror. By the time the girl agreed to help them erase the man, she had already convinced herself it was not murder. It wasn't betrayal, not the selling of a soul, but an initiation fee paid in another person's suffering. They promised her a lump sum large enough to quiet her conscience and place among the hidden ones. The circle behind the screens, the nameless architects who lived two lives. One ordinary and smiling in daylight, the other luxurious, predatory, and encrypted in the dark. She had wanted a man ruined long before they even approached her. She called it getting her lick back, as if vengeance were a debt and his breathing were an insult. What she did not know was that the circle had selected her precisely because of that wound. Under Jupiter Square Chiron, even injury in her became exaggerated, holy, and poisonous. They told her pain was power, humiliation was proof, and loyalty could only be proven by helping them destroy somebody who still had the nerve to stand after being broken. The circle called itself nothing in public. That was part of its strength. It wasn't a gang. It wasn't a cult. It wasn't a company. Not even a club. Not officially. It was an online cathedral of watchers, scammers, handlers, gamblers, and masked patrons who hid behind developer apps, mock websites, mirrored devices, false login pages, hidden cameras, and rooms full of stolen lives. They studied people the way insects study light before drowning in it. They invaded homes through screens, relationships through gossip, bank accounts through tricks, and minds through exhaustion. They aired private suffering as entertainment for those who were willing to pay to watch. A person sobbing alone became a clip, a panic attack became a wager, a breakdown became a leaderboard. The highest members, the ones with money, favors, badges, uniforms, clearances, and clean reputations, did not merely want victims humiliated. They demanded endings. Quiet ones. Useful ones. Endings that could be blamed on the victims themselves. They called it the hunt. No one said the word murder. They were too clever for that. They used softer phrases, prettier lies, pressure, correction, incentive, behavioral collapse, self-selection. They spoke like analysts, like therapists, like soldiers, like priests, and sometimes like investors. Former military men among them had stolen the language of discipline and turned it into theater for cowards. Coordinated intimidation, road pressure, trying to run people off the road intentionally to cause accidents, sleep disruption, false narratives, staged confrontations, engineered situations, planted rumors, manipulated emergencies. They turned tactics once meant for war into games against civilians. If a target was driving, shapes appeared in the mirrors. If a target tried to sleep, messages arrived at impossible hours. If a target reached out for help, the circle reached there first, with whispers. If a target resisted, something they loved would be threatened. A child, a pet, a job, a home, a reputation, a freedom, a memory even. Compliance had to look voluntary, though. That was the elegance of the game. They wanted the victim to seem like the author of his own destruction. The girl was given her role beneath a sky that pretty much looked wrong, as if the heavens themselves had been rearranging it into a warning. Neptune, Saturn, and Chiron stood in Aries like three wounded sentries at the gate of a burning battlefield. Illusion, consequence, and injury marching under the sign of a blade. Their message wasn't gentle. Neptune blurred the faces, Saturn kept a ledger, Chiron exposed a wound that refused to close. The girl mistook the omen for permission, though. The circle mistook it for cover. The man, however, felt it as pressure in the air. The kind animal sense before storms and liar sense before exposure. He had no name in their files. Not really. If he did, it'd be something odd like Bipena, which to them would be clever or intrusive or disgusting in some sort of way. He had labels: liability, asset, target, problem, rat, snitch, madman, narcissist, threat. They called him whatever served the room that they were in at the time. To the gamblers, he was a line of odds. To the watchers, he was a show like the Truman Show. To the handlers, he was a private case study. To the girl, he was the face of an old humiliation she polished into hatred, until it shone like a sacred object. But to him, he was simply a man trying to understand why every road suddenly narrowed, why every device seemed to breathe on its own, why strangers knew details that they really shouldn't know, why people smiled too quickly when he entered a room, why every accusation arrived almost rehearsed. The circle believed confusion was the closest thing to control. They knew that if they could make a man explain too much, defend too much, panic too visibly, and appear too desperate, the world would stop asking what had been done to him and start asking, what was wrong with that guy? So they built him a maze made of reflections. Mock sites echoed real ones, messages began vanishing, mirrorless cameras appeared in places that no camera really should have been. Friends repeated phrases that they had no reason to even know. Cars appeared too often on roads too empty. Every coincidence wore the same perfume. The girl watched from the edge of it all, though, thrilled and terrified, feeling her initiation ripen, though. Each time the man stumbled, the hidden room applauded. But each time he recovered, the applause thinned. Then came Gemini. Uranus, the sun, and Mercury gathered in Gemini like lightning trapped inside of a mouth. Suddenly every secret wanted language. Every mirror developed a crack. Every false account developed a shadow. Every handler spoke way too much. The group's greatest weapon had always been communication. Non-civilian, almost military or occult-based communication. But under that sky, communication became a blade that turned into the hand. Screenshots survived deletion. Old files resurfaced. Contradictions lined themselves up like witnesses. Flip-to-script software meant to cover digital footprints were lined with counterintelligence software carrying shortcuts with ghost pipeline tracers. The man began keeping records, not in madness, but in rhythm. Dates, names, roads, timelines, devices, patterns. The more they chased him, the more the geometry appeared in their movements. The more they tried to make him look unstable, the more stable the evidence became. And when the opportunity presented itself, he had planned on presenting them to perspective of winning while switching counties to build silently and come back and ensure their downfall. It's like letting them think he died and coming back from the dead. Had they paid attention like they thought they did, they would have noticed that he was aware the whole time and just learning their language, learning their moves, learning their thought process and how they coordinate. The girl did notice, though. She was the first one to notice. She saw the elders stop laughing. She saw the gamblers hedge. She saw the former soldiers speaking shorter sentences. She saw the mockery become caution, then irritation, then it became fear. The man was not collapsing correctly. He was not drinking the story that they poured for him. He was not accepting his role. He was not crashing, confessing, vanishing, or breaking in a way that could be packaged. It was even worse. He had begun to understand the hunt, their language, their code, their methods, how to trigger it intentionally so it can be seen. Not all of it, though, not yet, but enough to know the shape of the animal stalking him. Jupiter in Cancer rose over the story like a swollen moon above the locked house. The circle had miscalculated the one thing it had always underestimated: attachment. They believed love made people weak because love could be threatened. They believed family, memory, ancestry, and home were soft places to press until a person obeyed. But Jupiter in Cancer does not merely protect the home. It enlarges the ancestral alarm encoded in some people's DNA. It turns the kitchen light into a lighthouse, the old photograph into testimony, the locked door into a vow. Every threat they made against what the man loved became another reason he refused to disappear. Every attempt to isolate him made the unseen architecture around him grow stronger. The girl began dreaming of houses with no doors and mirrors that showed her from behind. In every dream, the man stood at the far end of the hallway, not accusing her, not chasing her, only watching as the walls replayed what she had agreed to do. She saw herself taking the money. She saw herself smiling at messages that described his fear, or what they thought was fear. She saw herself telling the circle where he might go, what might hurt him, what name would cut deepest. It's like they were exchanging information built on his psychology that they perceived in which to approach and wound deepest. What a weird thing to do. She saw the initiation not as a doorway upward, but as a trapdoor downward. When she woke, the payment had not arrived, but the guilt definitely had. The circle demanded one final proof. They told her the man was close to exposing things that powerful people preferred to keep buried. Probably should have paid him instead of her then. They told her that he was dangerous. Told her that he would ruin everybody. They told her she had already crossed too many lines to pretend that she was innocent. That was the true initiation. Not the first wrong act, but the moment they made retreat feel absolutely impossible. They needed her frightened enough to continue. They needed her implicated enough to obey. They needed her hatred alive because hatred was easier to steer than loyalty. But the man had learned something by then. A hunt depends on the prey believing it is alone. And he never was alone. He figured out how to get attention long before and played Chase the Dragon and allowed them to do whatever they felt like doing and complied with all the crazy asinine demands that they made in order for the right people to see exactly what was going on. So he stopped running in circles and began walking straight through the center of the maze. He let them reveal themselves by overcorrecting. He intentionally triggered peripherals illegally placed in his home so they can be watching him in his every move. It's like mapping somebody in real time. That's weird. He let the watchers mistake silence for weakness. He let the handlers grow impatient. He let the girl believe she still had time to choose. And when the circle finally moved too fast, too publicly, too greedily, their hidden empire exposed its own machinery. The planted stories started not to align. The false witnesses contradicted one another. The luxurious second lives began leaving trails, money trails, wire transfers, digital footprints. The mock suffering had been archived by the same technology that they worshipped and stood behind. The hunt had made a spectacle of him, but spectacles require an audience, and audiences always remember. In the end, no one in the circle was named because names were too small for what they had become. They were a system, a organization. They were masks, offices, usernames, uniforms, favors, burner accounts, borrowed authority, and rotten appetites dressed as strategy. The girl was not named either. She became the warning whispered through the ruin of the network. The initiate who thought betrayal would buy her belonging, only to discover the door she entered through locked from the outside. And the man, the one they had bet against, the dark horse on the dark web, the one they had chased through the roads, tried to cause an accident, tried to get the guy to basically take himself out to make it look like an accident. Rumors, and reflections did not become what they needed him to become. He became the thing every secret society fears most, a witness who survived the ritual. Under Jupiter square Chiron, the wound became too large to hide. Under Neptune, Saturn, and Chiron in Aries, the battlefield remembered every illusion, every consequence, and every injury. Under Uranus, Sun, and Mercury in Gemini, the lie split into twins and argued with itself. Under Jupiter in Cancer, the house of blood, memory, and protection refused to collapse. And by the time the hidden room realized that the mirrors had been turned around, the hunt, it wasn't even a game anymore. It wasn't even played against the man. It was evidence, exactly as the man anticipated it being. Evidence. Almost like he knew the whole time he was intentionally trying to take out a whole group. Probably look good on a resume. We're going to end this with the invocation of the Red Storm and the Falcon Crown. I call upon Set, Lord of the Red Desert, Master of Storm, Chaos and Rupture, and the violent wind that strips illusion from the bones of false kingdoms. Stand at the edge of this hunt and overturn the tables of the hidden room. Let every mast crack beneath the pressure of its own lie. Let every secret passage become a corridor of exposure. Let every shadow that fed on fear be dragged into the dry, burning light where no glamour, trick, false witness, planted story, or poisoned bargain can survive. I call upon Horus, Falcon of the Living Crown, divine eye above the battlefield, guardian of the rightful order, witness of bloodline, memory, and truth. Lift your wing over the one who was hunted, watched, wagered against, and marked for ruin. Let the eye see what was hidden, what cameras could not understand, that surveillance is not wisdom, that cruelty is not power, and that a soul protected by divine law does not collapse because cowards gathered in numbers. Set, bring the storm that scatters the conspirators from their false thrones. Horus, bring the sight that names each deception in by its own shape. Let the Red One break the machinery of coercion, and let the Falcon restore the record. Where they used confusion, let there be clarity. Where they used fear, let there be courage. Where they planted evidence, let the original truth rise. Where they called the innocent prey, let the heavens answer. No hunt outruns the gods. By the desert wind and the solar eye, by the broken chain and the restored crown, by the thunderous set and the judgment of Horus, let the hunted become the witness, and let the witness become the reckoning, and let every hidden hand learn that what was done in the darkness was never unseen. The storm has arrived, the falcon has circled, the mirror has turned, and the hunt is now over. By crown unseen and throne unshaken, by key beneath tongue and star beneath bone, let the word be weighed, let the hidden hand be known, let false doors close and rightful doors open. What was whispered in shadow is now entered into the ledger of fire. What was bound in silence is now carried by witness, seal, and sovereign breath. No mask outranks the mirror. No lie survives the royal measure. No stolen power keeps its borrowed throne. The crown has heard. The gate has turned. The mark is set. Thus, it is sealed beyond recall. As the whispered Emperor, so it is whispered, so it is decreed, and it is so. I'll see you in the next one, guys.